Okay, so this is going to be Sketching a Crime Scene Part 1. This is going to go over all the really main details that you need to know to get ready for sketching a crime scene. The next video that you're going to watch is going to have all the details in it about what you need to have for each of your individual crime scenes. One of the big things that we really want to make sure that we're doing in forensic science is that we're staying all three fast, accurate, and organized. So when you first get to a crime scene, time is going to be of the essence. You aren't going to have very much time, so you need to make sure that you're collecting and analyzing that evidence very quickly, so you don't have very much time to make all those measurements and everything. What you need to do as a crime scene investigator is you need to make sure that you're making measurements. So that means measurements of all the things about the room, the length, the width, the volume, literally anything that you can think needs to be measured is going to have to get measured within that time frame. The other big thing is you can't disturb any of the evidence while you're trying to do this, so you need to be as careful as humanly possible. So when we look at a rough draft, what we're trying to do is just get all the big important pieces of the room. When you are in lab, you're going to be creating a rough draft sketch as a group and then taking that rough draft to create a final nice draft using Lucidchart, so making everything look nice and computer generated. So the first step when you're drawing a rough sketch is you're going to want to draw a rough outline of the room. So if the room is rectangular, if the room is square shaped, whatever the dimensions are. You want to make sure you include the windows as these kind of rectangles drawn on the wall and doorways as sort of this opening within those walls, okay? So making sure that you have both those components. You can't just draw a straight wall if there are windows there. You have to draw in those little rectangles to demonstrate that there is a window, because those can often be points of entry. The second step is that you're going to want to measure the dimensions of the crime scene location. So you'll notice here in this example, they have that this length of this wall is 26 feet and this length of this wall is 32 feet, okay? So you want to make sure that you have that, as well as the accurate locations of, let's say, windows within that wall. So it's really important when you're doing a crime scene sketch to make sure everything is drawn to scale. So you can't just kind of willy-nilly figure it out and just say, oh, this is about 30 feet. That doesn't work. If you try to bring that into a courtroom, they're going to throw it away and say that this is a faulty sketch and you can't use it. So having that accuracy there for your measurements is going to be really important. And you can use metric or you can use imperial. Either one will work. It's really whichever you're comfortable with. I always err on the side of metric because it's easy to figure out centimeters and all that stuff. It's easier for me at least, but if you would like to work in feet and inches, that's of course up to you. So then the next thing you want to do is you want to sketch out all the furniture that's in the room and the evidence using really basic shapes. So you don't need to draw out super detailed body lines and all that kind of stuff and have exact pictures of what the furniture looks like. Just having a square for, let's say, a countertop is just fine, okay? It's really all you need. You're just trying to show when and where the stuff is. So like this trail right here, even though it doesn't really look like it, this is actually blood splatter. Okay, so with blood splatter, you do not need to draw like exactly what the splatter marks look like or what the trailing marks look like or anything like that. You're essentially just trying to show the main basics using these basic shapes here. Your fourth step is going to be to label things. So the big thing that you don't want to do is like put A here, footprints. You wouldn't want to write that on your sketch because that's going to make it really really difficult for someone to be able to read what it is that you've written. So instead, what we're going to include is a key, and then you can just put letters denoting what exactly that is. So in that case, if I'm looking at B, I know that that's an overturned chair. If you look at the picture of it on the sketch, it doesn't look like an overturned chair. However, the key indicates to me that that is what it is, and that is where it's located. The next thing is that you want to make sure that you label the diagram with these things, including the date, the time, location, and victim's name if it's known. If it's not known, then we'll always just revert to John Doe or Jane Doe. One of those two. That's usually the standard name for anyone who we are not sure who they are or what their identity is. So again, John or Jane Doe. Measuring from fixed points. We're going to get into more detail with this over the next slideshow and screencast, but let's say you have a body, like this one bottom in the corner. I just don't want to draw it in the middle of my drawing. I want to make sure I know where it is exactly located in this room. So you want to always measure it from what are called fixed points. So fixed points means that it's something that's not movable. It could be a wall, it could be a chair, it could be a cabinet, it could be something that's essentially not able to be moved. So a chair would not count as a fixed object unless it is bolted into the ground. Or let's say a table could not be a fixed object unless it is extremely heavy and would be difficult to move. And let's say you make these measurements and you show where they are on the drawing itself. So like here, I know that that body is exactly 7 feet and 1 inch away from this window because that's exactly what the drawing tells me. You're not going to show this on the actual sketch. So when you first draw your rough sketch, you'll indicate that on there. But when you show your final sketch that's computer generated, you wouldn't have those fixed points marked on there. You would put that over in your key saying, body is found 7 feet, 1 inches from left window, something like that. And you would have arrow marks indicating that right there. So some examples that you'll see when we look at some crime scene sketches here, you can see it kind of has all those details. Again, nothing is particularly detailed within the drawing. It has all these numbers located, very rough sketches shown here. If you've ever taken architectural drawing, you'll notice that this looks a lot like a blueprint. That's essentially what it is and what it is that you're drawing. In our case, we're only be going by one room. This is an example of an entire home. So this is another example. This is one that's computer generated. This is going to be what your final draft ends up looking like. You're going to have a lot of these architectural components, but again, it would only be concerned in one room. So let's say we were looking at just the kitchen. You see the victim's body here, but again, none of these things are actually drawn. And you can also see that there's all these points of reference. So a baseline start point is found where the star is, which looks to be, trying to find it on here, right here. Okay, so I can use this legend to sort of figure out where things are located and how far they're located from based on what I'm given. So we can use different symbols and those kind of things. This is actually a very well done drawing. And here, this one is a little bit less detailed. So here we only have 3 pieces of evidence that are collected. This would be like a very, very rough sketch. So I'm going to put that under there as very rough. This would be like your first glance, just quickly running into the room and seeing what it is that you have. And so your final sketch, that's what you'll be doing kind of at the end, and this will be done individually. But the one thing to remember is that you don't get to sketch a crime scene twice. So you need to get all that information the first time. So when you're in lab, you need to make sure you're utilizing that lab time to try to get as much information about the crime scene as possible. So you do that final sketch after you've already left the crime scene, everything's been cleaned up. That's what takes place afterwards. You can draw this on paper, on graph paper, but instead of doing this on ruler and scale, we're going to do this on what is called Lucidchart, which allows us to make floor plans, and we can make it using that application. So it's going to be a little bit easier.